If you've clicked on this video thinking that I'm going to be saying a whole heap of bad things about the Nikon Z50 here, that's not going to be happening. In fact, I'll be saying the complete opposite. So why am I sending it back? Back in June this year, I made the decision I wanted to check out one of Nikon's crop sensor cameras just to see what they were like. But instead of buying a camera like I'd normally do, for the first time I actually hired one to try out for 6 months. Back in June, the Nikon Z30 wasn't released yet, so I had the choice of either the ZFC or the Z50 models to choose from. I ended up with the Z50. It was relatively cheap to do this. This only cost me just over a couple of $100 to hire this refurbished Nikon Z50 for just over 6 months. During the 6 months I had the Z50, I was able to try it out for a lot of different things, including astrophotography, video, bird and wildlife photography, and I even got to use it while reviewing gimbals and third-party Z-mount crop sensor lenses. My overall summation for the Nikon Z50 is that it is a fantastic little camera for the price. So after having the Z50 for the last 6 months to try out, will I end up buying one for myself? And the answer to that is no. I know, I said it's a fantastic little camera. Let me explain. At the moment, I own 3 full-frame Nikon cameras. That's the Nikon D750, the D850, and the Z7. I know, right? How many cameras does just one guy need? But I think you'd actually be surprised how I use each one of these cameras for different types of photography. Now, as a full-time photographer, I can understand having 3 camera bodies, and if I was to buy the Nikon Z50, that would make 4. But I think I'd probably have to do some serious explaining to the missus. In fact, come next year, one of these cameras is actually going as well, as I clear the decks for preparation. 2023, I think, is shaping up to be an amazing year for new cameras. Whispers are out that Nikon have the keenly anticipated Z8 announcing in March or April, which some are touting as the true D850 version mirrorless camera. Also, sometime next year, we might very well be seeing the release of a Nikon APS-C camera that will be like a Nikon D500 DSLR, only in a mirrorless version. The Z90 or Z70, whatever its name might be, I believe will have some of the borrowed tech from the Nikon Z9, including a more advanced focusing system. This new crop sensor camera is the one I particularly have my eye on for birds and wildlife, and I'll be looking at possibly teaming it up with the Nikon 400mm f4.5s telephoto prime lens, giving me a 600mm reach due to the 1.5 crop. Maybe by then, the long-awaited Nikon Z200 to 600mm lens will be available to take into consideration also. That 200 to 600mm lens would transform into a 300 to 900mm on a crop sensor camera. So should I be investing my cash into a Nikon Z50 model when those newer models are just around the corner? And again, the answer, well, for me that is no. After having the Z50 for the last 6 months, the pros for me were it's super lightweight, relatively compact, which is great for traveling, especially with the 2DX kit lenses you can buy with it. It has amazing 4K video. Image quality in both stills and video are right up there with those of my full frame cameras. Having the automatic 1.5 crop came in very handy for things like shooting the moon and birds and wildlife. It's super easy to use, small enough to be used on a lightweight gimbal, and uses inexpensive SD memory cards. The cons, well, not too many. The focusing system comes to mind firstly in that it's lagging behind its Canon and Sony rivals like the R7 and A6600. Battery life for me anyway, was a little bit average. And there's not many native Z-DX lenses available to choose from at the time of making this video, with photographers having to rely on FTZ adapted lenses. And I know a lot of you are still waiting on that 12 to 28mm DX lens from the Nikon Z lens roadmap. I guess there was a good lesson in this for me. Instead of buying a particular lens or camera, I think it's worth hiring it to begin with to see if it's the right piece of gear that suits my needs. It certainly opened my eyes to the possibilities of the APS-C world, and it certainly saved me a lot of money while educating myself. I love this little Nikon Z50, but it's just not the right camera for me right now. And by no means is this a signal saying that it's a bad camera. It's not. With cameras like the Nikon Z8 and the APS-C Z90 or Z70 on their way soon, I thought it best to hang off buying any new cameras until I get to check out those models first. In the meantime, I have 3 other very good and capable Nikon cameras to keep me going. Exciting times ahead on my channel next year. I had a lot of fun with this little Nikon Z50, but it is time to send it back in preparation for my next camera or cameras. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.